chapter 14, starting with verse 1.
Praise to God.
Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I wouldn't have told you. But I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, so that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. And from now on, you do know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. And Jesus answered, don't you know me, Philip? Even after I have been among you such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and that the Father is in me? And the words that I say to you are not just my own. Rather, it is the Father living in me, who is doing his work. This is the gospel of Christ.
Praise to Christ the Lord.
Anybody heard that passage before? I wanted to recap from last week. Remember last week we were in John 10, right? Another very famous passage where Jesus is talking about being the good shepherd, right? Jesus is talking about how the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, but he has come that we might have what? Okay, a little more enthusiasm. Jesus has come that we might have life. We might have life to the full, life abundantly, a totally fulfilling life. And then the second thing that we notice that's very important to recognize is that Jesus does not define once and for all what a fulfilling life looks like for everybody. Right? Because it is relative. What a fulfilling life is for you may be a nightmare for me. Right? And see, this is why a one-size-fits-all spiritual experience, building boxes and making people jump through hoops is not what it is that Jesus came to do. Whenever we see these boxes being built, you can rest assured that the Pharisees have moved into town. Right? That religious people who seek control, who are afraid of the mystery. These are the ones who are going to seek to try to make everyone conform. And it makes the beauty, the power, and the message of Christ sort of without any effect. So Jesus teaches us that at the heart of the gospel is the promise of life and the possibility and the potential and the power to bring life to the world. Do you get this? Does that excite you at all? I mean, you're kind of... You are here. This whole thing is about life. And you look around and you see so many people who are simply existing. They're not really living. And if they are living, they certainly aren't feeling fulfilled in their life. And maybe you're here today and you're not feeling incredibly fulfilled either. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're just overwhelmed or stressed out. Maybe you're trying to measure up to what somebody else thinks is cool, and you're trying to constantly be that person who you really know. Well, see, this is what Jesus comes to set us free from all of that, to really discover us, to discover who we were created to be, and to be fulfilled in the life that he leads us in. So we're not only saved from our selfishness, from our destruction, from an unfulfilled life, we are saved for something. And that is to bring life to the world. In today's gospel, we have the key to a fulfilling life. There are two foundational elements to a fulfilling life. Are you ready? These are two things that you have to have in your life if you are going to live in a fulfilled way. And this is it. Trust and belonging. Do you get this? Trust and belonging. If you've ever been can you remember being a kid? If you were a child and you grew up in a house where you could trust the love and the care of your parents, how many have that experience? Wasn't that great? But you know what? There's a lot of people who don't have that. You can see so many issues that people go through in their life, later in life, and you can take it right back to the beginning. Hey, you can take it right back to the lies that they heard, to the things that were spoken over them. And somewhere in their life, trust was eroded away. Without trust, you're sunk. And without belonging, you'll never feel safe. So Jesus says to these disciples, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. Now, context is everything, right? John 13. Jesus has just been sitting with his disciples in the upper room. They're getting ready to do the Last Supper, right? And Jesus goes, one of you is going to betray me. I don't know about you, but if you were sort of the inside and you were one of the posse and you didn't know what he was talking about, you think you'd be a little troubled. Is it me? Am I going to be the one who fails? Am I going to be the one who messes up? Am I going to be the one who's going to blow it? Not me. Oh, please, not me. So you can imagine they're a little bit on pins and needles. And then Peter goes, I'll go with you anywhere. You know. And then what does he say? Peter, before the rooster crows, you're going to what? You're going to fail. You're going to fail me. You know. So these guys are sitting in a situation where suddenly they're being confronted with the fact that they're going to blow it. They're going to mess up. That's unsettling, isn't it? And Jesus says, but hey, don't let your hearts be troubled. Because it isn't perfection we're going for. It's life. Trust in God. Trust also in me. Trust is fundamental to life. It is fundamental to life. Without trust, life becomes intolerable. Do you agree? I mean, think about it. You would have a constant battle against paranoia and a sense of looming disaster all the time without trust. You can't even have relationships without trust, especially good ones. How many of you are in relationships? All of you, right? Imagine the nature of that relationship without being able to trust the person that you're in a relationship with. Pretty sad. Pretty scary. You cannot feel fulfilled or live a fulfilling life without trust. You with me? So this is fundamental stuff. It's not rocket science, but it's something that we often overlook. Because we think that maybe we can be cool enough. Maybe we can be strong enough. Maybe we can be rich enough. Maybe we can be skilled enough. Maybe we can be smart enough. But we all know that we're not, right? So we all struggle with the not enough syndrome, with the scarcity syndrome. But Jesus speaks life into us and speaks the promise of fulfillment to us. But he says the key is you got to learn to trust. You got to learn to trust. I was thinking about this today, about some people throughout my life and throughout my ministry who you could just see how badly their life was going, how tormented they were because they couldn't trust. I think especially of this guy we call Bomber Bill. And we worked with him on the street, and he was just constantly paranoid about everything. You know, there was always a conspiracy. They were always out to get him. I remember one time he said, Andy, I'm going to write a book. I said, yeah, what is it? He says, How to Live in America and Get Away with It. You know? I mean, that was this kind of thing. It's like life is something you got to get away with. Think about it. How many of us live like that? Life is something you just got to get away with. Somehow you got to try to get through it. And see, for him, because he couldn't trust anything, what we realize is that the biggest part of our ministry on the streets was simply letting people fail and still loving them. Week after week, week after week, week after week, they would come, they would receive prayer, they want to do everything for God, they want their whole life to change. 2 days later, they're stoned, they're in the gutter. You pick them up, you help them get back on their feet, and you love them. And you just keep loving them, and you just keep loving them. And that is what builds trust. And it came to a point where suddenly all of these misfits on the streets saw a place. Every week we became a sacred space for them to come and feel safe. Because they knew no matter what, no matter how badly they blew it, no matter if they blew up and lost their temper or swore at us or showed up in whatever state they would show up in, they would always be received and they would always be loved and they could always trust them. And because of that, they were able to grow. And it would be awesome to say, and all of them became mighty spirit-filled Christians, and all their problems went away. I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is this. If we go back there and we're walking down the street and we see some of those people, even to this day, their eyes light up, they come running up, they grab a hold of you, and they tell you how much they miss you. Because we created an element of trust. So how do we know we can trust in Jesus? Trust in God. Trust also in me. How do we know we can trust in Jesus? Well, there's ample evidence, right? Historical evidence. There's been more books written about Jesus than any other topic. There's been more studies about Jesus than any other topic, I'd say. And, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more studied topic, right? But beyond all the evidence, and there's plenty. We know he was a historical figure. We know that he existed. We know that he did these things, right? Well, many of the things that he claimed to. There's historians who documented it. But beyond all of that, beyond all of the evidence, the thing that I find for myself personally is because Jesus has the words of life. Jesus has never steered me wrong. Now, listen, I've sort of heard what Jesus wanted me to do and not done it, and certainly ended up in the wrong space. But I can tell you, whenever I've faced any situation, if I stop and open my life to Jesus, to the words of Christ, to the words of life, and I have the courage and the grace to follow it, I've never been let down. I've never been let down by following it. It's been hard, but God has always come through. So that's the one thing that allows me to know that I can trust. Because how do my kids know they can trust in me? Well, when I say something to them or when I make a commitment, I follow through. Right? When they come to me with a massive failure and they receive love and they receive a hug and not a slap, right? That builds the trust. And my prayer is, I know my kids are going to mess up. They're going to mess up more and more, and that's what we do. That's what people do. We mess up, right? But I pray that they'll always know that no matter how they mess up, they will always be loved. And they can always trust in my love and Justine's love for them. That's what we desire, right? And this is what God desires for us. Trust in God. Trust also in me. I can't imagine, and this is one of the reasons I so trust in Jesus. I can't imagine a better way to live. I can't imagine a better, more fulfilling way to live life on planet Earth than to embrace the sense that if I love you and you love me, we can create this environment of love. what can we not accomplish? What can we not overcome? If you work it out to its logical extreme, and you love your neighbor as you love yourself, and everyone on planet Earth did that, what kind of world would we have? Now, let's consider what everyone else believes. Let's consider what the majority of New Zealand believes. You want to know what the majority of New Zealanders believe? If I have enough money, then I'll be fulfilled. Right? If I can just get enough. So let's work that out to its logical extreme. What if everyone lived their whole life thinking, if I could just get more? What kind of world would we live in? Well, walk outside and take a look. You don't have to go very far to see people who are just frantic and just fraught with stress, anxiety, all kinds of issues. What are they trusting in? Well, if we trust in Christ, you're going to find some freedom. You're going to find some wiggle room. You're going to find a way to live. Does this make sense? Can you imagine a more beautiful, fulfilling way to know God than as your loving Father? Can you think of a better way to know God? Do you have a better way of imagining the wonder and the awe of the God of the universe? The infinite Creator loves you and desires a relationship with you. How amazing is that? How wonderful is that? This is what Jesus offers to us. But here's the thing. Do people feel they can trust us to love them? Is this a place that people feel they can trust if they come here? If they come to this place, or if they're hanging out with us, that they can trust they're going to be loved? Can people trust that we'll accept them? Can people really trust that we will forgive them when they fail? Can they? I hope so. If they can't, we need to do something. We need to fix something in this place or in our hearts if people can't expect that. If our fundamental commitment cannot be to love and accept and forgive, then we're in trouble. Does that make sense? So let's not be in trouble. Let's not be in trouble. Let's embrace this trusting, know that we can trust in God and people can trust in us. Right? The second thing is this: belonging. Trust and belonging. In my Father's house are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. I'm going to come back. I'm going to take you to be with me. Now here's the thing to understand. It isn't a place. It isn't a place. It's a person. Right? Hey, how do we know where you're going? Jesus says, I am the way. Show us the Father. I am the Father. You know, we are being called into this dynamic relationship with God, into a dynamic relationship with Jesus, where you always belong. I want you to stop and reflect upon this for a moment. In my Father's house are many rooms. I'm going to prepare a place for you. What's that for you? There's a place for you. There's a place where you will be safe, where you belong. This is one of the hardest things when you leave your country. Right? Like for me, and I'm pretty Kiwified now. But, you know, when I left America, and then that first year I left America, when we got back, my mother died. So it's like, so I was orphaned. And, you know, then I'm in this country and I'm trying to make a, you know, life for myself and trying to take care of my family. And, you know, one of the biggest struggles I had in that season of life was that sense of, where do I belong? Where's home? And the thing that I've been on this journey to realize is, well, home is with God. Home is with my family. Home is where we are at this very moment in the presence of love. Whenever I can just stop and know, no matter where I am, because belonging isn't belonging to a place, but belonging to a person. Belonging with a person. Home is relationships, isn't it? Think of it right now. now. You know, a house is a building. A home is relationships. Do you agree? I mean, you can live in a shipping container. But if there is love, and there is hope, and there is laughter, and there's joy, and there's nurturing, guess what? That will be your home. You can live in a mansion and have total opulence. But if it's cold and hard and lifeless and uncaring, you see what I mean? So it isn't a place, it's a person. Jesus' statement, no one comes to the Father but through me, understand something. It's not about exclusivity. Okay, Jesus isn't trying to make the group smaller or trying to keep some people out. And I grew up with this as being the way that this was taught. That, there's only a few people. If you don't go through Jesus, you're just, that missing the point. That is not the point. The point here is this. There's a way. There are many ways people imagine God to be. Right? I mean, if you're a Buddhist, you'll have a picture of the Creator or God this way. And whatever your religion or your paradigm, everybody has a way they imagine God to be. When you come to Christ, the picture of God that is presented to you is what? Our Father. Instead of Almighty, infinite God of the universe, Jesus says, when you pray, pray, our Father. The picture that Jesus presents to us as His people is that we have an intimate relationship with a loving Father heart, who just so happens to be the creator of the universe. But there is a characteristic, there's a personality to this creator. And it is a loving Father. And you belong. You belong. How is that? To know that you belong. Multiple studies have proven over and over again that having a sense of belonging is one of the most critical elements in a person's sense of well-being and fulfillment. If you're going to live this fulfilling life that Jesus has for you, you got to learn how to trust, and you got to find a place you belong. Because without those two, you're sunk. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how smart you are, how cool you are, how good looking you are, what fashion sense you have, what kind of car you drive. You will not be fulfilled unless you have trust and belonging. And this is what Christ is offering us. This is what Christ is offering these troubled disciples on that day. Trust is a place for you. You belong. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Energy, God, life, love. But at the end of the day, this is what Jesus is talking about. There is a knowledge that there is still a deep and beautiful life alive in this dark and hurting world. That even at this moment, as dark as things can be, there's still life, and there's still beauty, and there's still a place where you belong. This loving Spirit is nurturing and calling you home. Now, here's the question that stands out for me. If this is the case, and I believe it is, then why do so many people fight against believing in this? Why do so many people have such a hard time embracing this? And here's, just quickly, here's some of the things that I think what it is. I think that part of the problem is perhaps because they've experienced a religion built on a culture of guilt and shame and negativity. What do you reckon? And maybe it's not this extreme, I saw this and my heart broke for that little boy. Man, what kind of picture of God does he have? I wonder how many people show up on a Sunday morning. I don't know. But see, we wouldn't be this extreme, would we? But ours is more subtle. We have a more subtle kind of negativity. For some reason, many churches have 3 questions they seem to ask of every new person that walks through the door. And here's the first one. What's wrong with you? Think of it. You know, you see this person out there, they look great, they got a good job, they got plenty of, and if they come to church, there's something in the back of your mind that says, what are you doing here? See, because maybe inside all of us, we all feel screwed up. Maybe we're here because we feel weak inside. We feel like we don't have enough or something. I don't know what that negativity is, but it seems like we're surprised when people walk through the door. What are you doing here? What's wrong with you? Right? And then, if we have the second question, how do we fix it? Can we fix it? What's broken? And so there's just sort of that idea. First of all, you're kind of weird for walking through the doors in the first place. So something must be wrong, because nobody's coming to church these days. It certainly isn't winning at any point in society going to church on a Sunday morning, so must be something wrong with you. Can we fix it? And then the third thing is, how much can you give? You're going to contribute to us here because, it ain't free. How can we make you conform to our little crew here? Now see, is it any wonder that so many people have the idea that the only people who go to church have something wrong with them? Because why in the world would you want to go to church on a Sunday morning when the sun's shining? Why in the world would you want to be here when you could be paddling the canoe down the river or playing golf? Well, if we get to the heart of what it is that we're here doing and that Christ is offering us, we recognize, well, it's because we belong. It's because we nurture a sense of a fulfilling life. We look to see, to receive equipping and to receive something that will feed our souls so that we can still live that fulfilled life, so that we can leave here walking in the fullness of life. That's why I come here. That's why I pray that I can help you do this somehow. Something I say, maybe I say too much, probably, but it's this thing that Christ is offering you life to the full, a fulfilling life, where and built on trust and belonging, and that this is our laboratory. This is where we get to practice trust and belonging. This is where we get to practice forgiveness and grace. This is where we get to practice what it is to receive people who hurt us. You ever been hurt by a Christian? Yeah. See, that's the whole point. We learn how to forgive each other. But Jesus teaches us that what really draws people to the church is they desire to belong. And they know it. Because they know that a fulfilling life, at the end of the day, is built on trust and belonging. What's it built on? Trust and belonging. It's not rocket science, but it's incredibly important. So the questions are, how do we nurture that? See, a fruitful church is a church that makes people feel like they belong. Say it with me. A fruitful church makes people feel that they belong. Okay, now here's the key. Not that they can belong, but that they do belong. There's a huge difference. Because if you can belong, that means, well, as long as you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this, then you can. But that's not the gospel. The gospel is, in my Father's house, there's room for you. You do belong. You should not feel weird to walk through the doors of this church. When I'm out there and somebody says, oh, I'm going to go to church, it'll fall in on me. No, you belong. You belong just like I belong. Everyone belongs. Because that is what the cross is. That's what our gospel is. In my Father's house are many rooms. And there's one for you. There's a place where you belong. So here's some things we can reflect upon today. How can trusting in Jesus help you out today? What are you facing? What are you up against? What do you value more? Believing or belonging? you feel like you belong? And the last one is one for us as a church. How can we help more people feel like they belong with us? We're not some weird group out there on the fringe. We're the place where people belong. Let us stand and affirm ourselves.